Welcome to the Hard-Won Wisdom Podcast with best-selling author Fawn Germer and corporate innovator Michelle Brigman. Come here weekly for career and life-changing conversations with some of today's most influential thought leaders, senior executives, and trailblazers who will share their mentoring wisdom. This podcast is brought to you by the Women's Leadership Network.
Hi, I'm Fawn Germer.
And I'm Michelle Brigman.
And this is the Hard-Won Wisdom Podcast. Today we have part 2 with Marie Quintana, who is a corporate senior executive who has accomplished everything, learned so much. And in the first part talked about really some hard growth moments from the time she left Cuba at 4 years old and became, she was the powerhouse of the family. Thank you, Michelle. And now we're going to move into a very difficult moment where we talk about 7 days in her life where she went from joy to sorrow and the greatest joy to the greatest sorrow. It's a hard story, and I just am so grateful she's telling it because her wisdom along the way is going to be very inspiring to many of you. So, Marie.
Thank you. Thank you, Fawn and Michelle. Yes, so it's a difficult story. And it's not one that you think will ever happen to you, right? I mean, we go about our everyday taking many things for granted. And so the story, first of all, let me give you a little bit of backdrop because it really centers around my oldest son. His name is Danny. And Danny was my oldest. He was actually born on my birthday. So he was due a few weeks later, but I had him on my birthday. It was my birthday gift. And he was intelligent, smart, but as he grew into his teenage years, you could tell that he had some learning differences. And as he got into college, he developed mental illness. So he had a mental illness that required medication and really prevented him from going to a 4-year college, but he did work very, very, very hard. And over the course of 5 or 6 years, he finished his 2-year college degree, which he was so proud of himself. And so Danny had to be on medication, which was a really difficult thing. If anyone has had their loved ones on medication for mental illness, it does horrible things to your body. It keeps you from being hungry. Sometimes it keeps you from sleeping, or you sleep too much. And basically you don't ever feel yourself. And sometimes Danny would not take his medicine. And I knew when those times would happen. And, we were fortunate that we had a place here in town that he had been to. And when he's not on his medication, and let's say he becomes manic, he would have to go to this center, this clinic, and they would keep him there and give him medication and come back. And so I was his caregiver from the standpoint that I watched everything he did. I made sure he was in the right place. We had found it was a beautiful home for men. There were probably about 8 or 9 of them, all, very smart men that had gone through mental illness. And it was a husband and wife that lived with him there. And so I became sort of like the godmother to this home, and always, did things with my son and his and the men that were there. So as time went on, one of the things that happened in my life was that I think in the previous podcast I said that I had gone through a divorce, and then I met someone and we were going to get married. We had planned a wedding, thinking about where we're going to have it. My mom lives in Florida, so we thought we really wanted to have it in Florida, where a lot of my family, Cubans, could come in from Miami, and we wanted a family wedding. So we planned to have a wedding in Florida, and I got, obviously, tickets for us all to leave the week before. And as the date of when I was leaving for the wedding came closer, I could tell that my son could not go. It was one of those moments when he had not taken his medicine. And I got worried that something would happen to him while we were in Florida. So I told him it was best for him not to go, and that we would probably come back and I was going to have a party here in Dallas and celebrate with a lot of my friends in Dallas, because this is a very small wedding that we were having, a family wedding in Florida. And it broke my heart, but he understood it.
Marie,
And
I want to interrupt with one thing because I don't think the listeners know this, and I know this because I met Danny. He was the gentlest,
oh yeah,
kindest, sweetest. So that when you hear of somebody with mental illness who's got issues and has to take medication, please don't make any assumptions like that, because this guy, he had the sweetest, kindest energy. And I want them to know that. And what
yes.
I saw with you as a mother to him, just such love.
He would
So,
give
okay.
of himself. And to your point, one of the things that he always wanted to know was who could he pray for? And if he knew that anyone in the family was sick or needed prayers, he would run into his room. He would pull the pillow. Once I said, Danny, why is this pillow underneath your bed? He said, Mom, leave that pillow underneath my bed. That is my praying pillow. And he would pull the pillow out and get on his knees and pray, to the point where my family, anytime my family was going through any hardships, they would call me and ask me to tell Danny to pray for them.
Oh, wow.
So he was very, very special and had a heart for everyone.
Yeah, just the
So it just breaks your heart, when you see someone that has a disease like this, because I used to always say, if he was in a wheelchair, you could see it, but you can't see mental illness. You can't see it. And there's not really a cure. There's a way that you can support and maintain it. So he was good with not going on the trip. And, even though it was very, very difficult for me. So I go to Florida. We leave like a few days before the wedding. The wedding was Saturday, October 14th. And my family was there. We had a beautiful wedding outside in Florida where you could have weddings outside. And, actually 2 days before the wedding, I was told that Danny had to go into the hospital because of his medication. So not only was he not taking his medicine, he had an episode where he had to go to the hospital to make sure that he had taken his medicine. So my ex-husband was with him here in Dallas, and I went to the wedding, and we stayed in Florida. And the Saturday of the wedding, let me just say, I had aunts and uncles and cousins from, again, all of Florida that came to the wedding. So it was a very, nice size wedding with my family. And we came back to Dallas on Monday after the wedding. So this was Monday. And it was interesting. I remember just receiving this, and I won't even go into it in detail, but I received this picture from my brother as a wedding gift. My brother's an artist, and he gave me a picture of my father and grandmother carrying like the Virgin Mary in Cuba. It was like an old photograph that he had redone. And I'm like, what an odd wedding gift is he showing me, my dad and my grandmother. And I remember seeing that as I went to bed, thinking, it's an interesting wedding gift, but there must be a reason for it. I went to sleep on Monday. And the hardest thing that I had to have ever been through is that on Tuesday at about 3:00 in the morning, I got a call that my Danny had passed away. And, obviously I can't even to this day even remember that you kind of get this call and you're like, I think I'm in a dream and I'm trying to wake up and I know this is a dream. And I actually felt that way for the next several days. It's like, what happened? Because I had called the hospital a few times, but of course, they don't let you talk to him and you couldn't really get information. And so, we, it was a complete nightmare. I mean, I went to the hospital with my husband, my friends met me there. we had the priest come and give him the last rites, and you don't ever, ever, ever think you're going to have to go through this. I mean, no mother should ever have to lose her child. And there's nothing in this world to help you through this moment other than obviously my faith, my family. I mean, telling my family, I had to call their brother and sister, which again, you're kind of talking and you feel like you're in a dream. So I had just gotten married on Saturday, and I come home from the wedding and to hear that this happened. So our community, our church came, to the hospital. We left the hospital, and I'll tell you, for the next 5 days, I don't think I would have made it had it not been for like earthly angels. I mean, I had like a door that was never shut of people coming in and out of my house, of just being there. Like, when you have someone that passes away and you're always afraid to say something to them, and it's like, you don't need to say anything. You just have to be there. They were just there for me. They were just there. And I don't know, how you make it. I mean, my husband carried me. So many people carried me. I mean, I literally stopped walking. They had to carry me through that. And then the question came, when do we have his funeral? And I'm like, what is this? I'm planning a funeral. I mean,
Yeah, right.
How do you do this? First of all, when you first hear it as a dream, so you think it's going to go away, you're going to wake up in the morning and it's going to be gone. And then the next day, you realize you're going to have to plan the funeral. So I had to tell my mom, which was one of the hardest things. I mean, and I didn't, I went to Florida for the wedding because I didn't want her to travel. I mean, and all of a sudden, every single person from my wedding turned around and came to Dallas.
Oh.
Every one of my relatives, every single one of them. And my mom came. And, my uncles came from New Orleans, and it's like the whole family just gathered around me. And I never forget seeing my mom. I was like, oh gosh, like it was so hard to tell her. I don't know. I was like, I constantly want to protect her. And so I planned his funeral. So one Saturday, I was in the most joyful moment that you ever have, right? This amazing wedding with this amazing family. And the next Saturday, I'm in a funeral with the entire group that was at my wedding. And, I decided I wanted to speak. And I did. I mean, I wanted to speak because he's an angel. He's an angel. He's an angel in heaven. He was an angel on earth. And so, we had over 900 people at this funeral. Danny was the manager for a football team, and his coach just adored him. The entire football team came, their jerseys. The coach spoke. And Katie, my daughter, spoke at the funeral. And so I have an uncle who's like a godfather. He's like a godfather. He came from Cuba. He's my mother's brother. He was a lawyer in Cuba, and he had to actually also leave in a difficult situation too, from Cuba, from communism. And he loved Danny so much. And I remember him telling me, the world's changed. The world will never be the same without Danny. And he said, and so he stayed with me that morning of the funeral, and he woke up early, and he said, I'm speaking today. I'm speaking at the service. I'm like, Uncle Charlie, you can't speak. That's the other thing. Is a Catholic church. You have the agenda thing, is already set. Who's speaking? And I don't know how I did this because I was in such a crisis. I planned all of this. And he goes, oh, no, I'm speaking. I've already got my speech. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to have to manage my uncle. So we go to the service and, and everyone to this day remembers this. So we're in the middle of the service. We're about to end the service and he hasn't spoken because he's not on the list of people to speak. And he looks at me like, when am I going to speak? I'm like, go, just go. And he runs to the altar and almost knocks down the priest. And I'm like, oh, and everybody's looking at me. And it was a moment, like, I know it was a heaven moment, like Danny wanted this. And I just kind of looked like, hey, he's got to speak. He's got something to say. And sure enough, he's the godfather of the whole family. So he starts thanking everyone and talking about, we as, a family, a close-knit family from Cuba and how much our family means to us. I mean, he just went on and on about Danny. And anyway, it was so memorable. It was so real. I just love him so much for doing that. And so, those 7 days, and finding out, and I will say what happened to Danny did not have to happen. So what happened to him, and I'll say it, he was given the wrong medication at the hospital and he died of a pulmonary embolism. And what they should have done is taken him and put him in the ICU, and they didn't. And so, it was one of those things that this didn't have to happen. And so you take all that information, you go, well, how do I move forward? What do I do? Right. Because when everybody goes home, that's what you have to deal with is your nights and your days and my kids, my twins, they took turns. My son, Brian, took time off from work. He was working in Atlanta. He took almost 2 months off and he stayed with me. And you know what he did? My first trip out, which was until like a couple of weeks later, I had to go to the grocery store. I said, I can't go to the grocery store. We went to the grocery store and Brian pushed the grocery cart for me. I couldn't push the grocery cart. And then he left and Katie came in and she stayed another month and a half or 2 months. And God has a way of healing you. And I really do believe, I believe so much in grace and, Danny, I talk to Danny all the time. Danny's with me all the time, but I found this beautiful book as I was going through books that came to me, and it is, in fact, I have it with me here, Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd. And in there is a piece that the author talks about that you have to live your deceased son or daughter's unlived years.
Wow.
That not only do you inherit his art, his letters, I inherit the things that were his that I still have, but you also inherit his unlived years. And it is now my honor to live those years for him. And I cannot tell you the courage that gave me.
Really?
The courage that I felt that, I have to do this for him. I have to do this. I have to go on this trip. I never forget, in the middle of all this, like maybe 3 months after he passed away, Lady Gaga was in town. And a friend of mine said, we're going to go see Lady Gaga. And I'm like, no, I can't. I'm too sad. I can't go to see Lady Gaga. And sure enough, I thought about this. I said, you know how much Danny loved Lady Gaga? He loved Lady Gaga. So I got my Lady Gaga wig on. And I dressed like Lady Gaga. And I went to this concert, and I just remember just like he was there, I learned I learned to be me. And I had the, conversation with so many people. And in all of that, I was told about this job at Tenet. It was 6 months after Danny passed away. And I thought, there's no way I'm going to be able to do this. I can't do this. And I, at the time, worked for the executive chairman and CEO of the company, who had also lost a son. This is how God works. He also lost a son the year before Danny. And I never forget him saying, "What other choice do you have? You have to do this because you have to keep walking. You have to do it for him." And so, it's like these earthly angels picked me up and put me there. And I went to Tenet. And, this gentleman and I, he passed away last year, a very dear friend of mine, mentor. But he and I would spend so many times talking about our sons. I mean, who's to say that I'm in this situation, working for this company, sharing this very amazing moment in our lives, and really almost helping each other through it. As much as I think I was there for him, he was there for me. Mm. And, through it, I've learned so much. I mean, I'm not the person that I used to be.
How do you think you're different?
Oh, I'm so different. I mean, first of all, I don't take anything for granted. Nothing. I don't take a day for granted. I mean, a goodbye is maybe a goodbye, right? You know that. I mean, I said goodbye to Danny. I cut him a pizza the last time I saw him. And so you learn to cherish, to be more present, to be a better listener, to be a better friend, to know the realities of just how you treat people is just really who you are, right? That defines who you are. And I don't take so many things serious. I mean, these things happen, and you know what? Tomorrow is a new day, and there'll be another issue, and you'll be another issue. And so you don't take so many things to bed to worry about all night, and to lay there and toss and turn about things you can't do anything about, because so many things that we worry about, you can't do a thing about them. And you become a worrywart for no reason, right? And you realize that the people in your life are so important. I mean, my mom, who's, still with us, which is amazing. She'll be 95 in June. You don't take any of that for granted. And, and I'll go back to my mom. I thought my mom was the one who was passing. I mean, there have been times, and Fawn, you've known this, where mom's been in the hospital or something's happened. I'm thinking, oh, this is it for mom. And so mom has been there for me. I know it now. And, when Danny passed away, I thought I was going to have to comfort her. And I was so upset about it. She's the one who's been comforting me. She's the one, her strength is off the chart. Her faith is so rock solid that, I just think that is the biggest gift. Like, whatever time she has left on this earth, she's been there for me. Yeah. So it has really been, I think, a learning beyond learning.
I remember when my dad and my mom died. Remember, it was very close together, two months apart. And you sat me down. I was at your house, and your dad had died. And you told me a couple of things. You said that this is a moment when all you do is just show up. You don't have to be your best, but you get points for just showing up. And you said, which is something we talked about in the previous episode, that the learning occurs when you're in those dark moments. And that's it's the only time you grow is when you're in those hard things. So you've described some of that growth. And you described showing up at Lady Gaga and with the job. But what I'd love for you to tell people is how you put that one foot in front of the other and keep moving forward when grief can really stick you to the floor.
I call it the treasures of the night. And only in the night can you find those treasures. And they're miracles. They're miracles. And I'll tell you that I know now that I would not even be in this place who I am today, feeling the way I am about things, if I had not walked through that fire. Because I do stop and look at the simple things. I mean, you know, and I know you do this, Fawn. I mean, when you look at the sunset, when you look at the birds, when you look at you're taken back by such amazing, simple things, and they start to change you. They start to humble you in a way that you've never been humbled. And, you know, you start with, you look up at that sunset and you know that there is a reason why you're still here. There's a huge reason why you're still here. And you're going to have the best year of your life because of it. And, you know, you can't, like you said, you live in the valley. You can't get rid of adversity. You can't get rid of, you know, close family passing away when you're not ready for them to go. All of that is going to come, and who knows what else is going to come. But what you know is that when you wake up, you are going to have this amazing sunrise day, followed by an amazing sunset day, because you have a purpose that day. And I firmly believe that. I mean, I believe in this grace beyond grace that comes, that you do not recognize it unless you've gone through that. So when I look at that sunset, or when I look at that bird that I've not really noticed before, I'm like, it touches me in such a deep way that I've allowed it. I've opened up my heart and my soul, and I've allowed my feelings to penetrate in a way that I had not been able to before. And I wish we didn't have to go through the fire to get there. But I think that it opens you up and it humbles you, and it makes you aware of your senses in a way that you never have been able to. And I'll tell you, when I was at Tenet, this is a very strange story. Over the course of time, I had 2 assistants sitting outside my door. Both of them lost sons while they worked for me. I'm not making this up. And I had to be their counselor.
Oh my God.
And help them through this.
How do you do that when you're still
How
on the
do
inside?
you do that with the strength that you have, the grace? I mean, God gives it to you when you need it. I could not make this up. So it was like, I was almost thinking like, is this why I'm here, to help them? I mean, so yes, you don't know why you're meant to be in a certain place at a certain time, but you do know that it's purposeful. And when you live your life that way, that it's a purpose, and when things don't work out, there's a purpose for that. Don't be regretting it or mourning it or angry about it because it didn't work out the way you wanted it to work out. There's such a purpose about that. It's not always going to go and work out the way you want it to work out. It's just not. But you're going to pick up the pieces and you're going to keep walking. You're going to let all those moments make you a better person so that you can help other people, like these 2 ladies outside my office at different times. They were working for me at different times.
That's unbelievable.
It just give off the energy to attract what people need. They knew they could come to you.
So how happy are you right now?
I'm very happy. I'm so happy.
You choose it. I mean, that's what I'm hearing. You choose it. You choose
I
to
am.
feel
I'm so happy.
gratitude. You choose to find the strength and
Yeah.
notice the light. I mean,
Yeah. And there's stuff that happens, things, and, up and down. But I'm just so happy. I'm just in a really good place. I feel like this is good for me. It's good. I'm in a place where I kind of look at each day and I'm like, God, if you want this to happen, let it happen. If not, I'm moving on. I'm not like into trying to change my life and do things and the thing is, it's also like I'm not competitive. I used to be more competitive. I'm just not. I'm not. I just choose to live in the present, and good things happen. Really, good things happen. You just stay in that mindset and you attract a lot of positive energy. And, you move away from negative energy. You just don't need it. You don't need them taking up any space in your mind. There's not enough time for that, right?
This is one of the most amazing shows.
yeah, I think that, grief, like you said earlier, Fawn, right? Grief can just completely mobilize you. And I'm thinking about my own experiences with loss and grief and feeling frozen. And I thought that a couple of things that just stood out with me is just whenever I heard you talking about really just when you're in despair, to move forward, you have to surround yourself with love. And that's what you did. And even when you were there for others, you were surrounding them with love and care and empathy and understanding and wisdom and strength. And I wrote down, right, learning to live in the light by living full of joy. And that's what honors your loved one. And then I also just think about some of the things that you shared. And I think it's a good reminder. Don't be afraid to ask for help, because that was the thing you did early on, is you were asking for help. And so fortunately, we're in a place where it's more forgiving to deal and confront and be more transparent with mental illness. Obviously, that's still not easy, but thanks to the strength of others, you were able to continue to get the support that you needed just to make it through the day, whether it was through your family, friends, staff. And then I think also just the reminder that so many of us, we don't know what to do whenever we want to support someone who's grieving. And I thought it was just beautiful, you talking about presence. And I wrote down that presence is priceless. Just as simple as that. Just, it's an incredible story, and it's inspiring. It's very empowering whenever you feel like you are weak.
Like if that's what Danny's story adds up to, really, because that is power for so many people to hear it and for you to draw it together. And I was so glad you wanted to talk about it here, but I think you should be talking about it all the time, although then that makes you live in it. But you have that amazing ability to find the takeaways in any moment. And I think it's your responsibility to just keep telling people things like that, because I told Michelle there will be so many things that you say that she's never going to forget. And
everybody has to deal with this. While it was the loss of a son, a child, not everybody is going to deal with that, but everyone deals with loss and everyone deals with grief, and it's a struggle. And your words and your story are encouraging and hopeful.
It's who we are as human beings, right? We're going to go through all these times, and that's why relationships are so important. they're your earthly angels.
Yes.
They will lift you up. And staying in contact with them through this time of loss and grief is about the love for both of you. I mean, there's no other choice. We're all going to experience it, and I think we're here together for that reason, to support one another.
100%.
Was the hospital ever held accountable?
Well, no, because I thought I was going to go there, but there's all kinds of issues of ER people not being accountable for this and that. And you know what? I didn't want to have to spend 5 or 6 years in a legal battle. It was heartbreaking for me when I decided that I was going to move on. And I still, every now and then, I even had talked to some lawyers about it, because everyone knew that they really should have been accountable. But I chose to not put myself through it or my family through it.
I had, journalistically, it was like this one unasked thing that needed to be asked. But that's interesting that you got that way, because there have been a couple of times when things have happened to me where they're significant and I could have. And again, it's like you don't want the culpability to be handed away, just passed over. But to spend years in that, I think that's a more powerful decision to say, I don't think so.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to give him a different, happiness, love. There was a moment in time when I didn't get into this, but 2 weeks after he passed away, there's a tree that's right over my swimming pool where these beautiful leaves fall in the pool. And they're red and green and yellow and pink. And so I took pictures of these leaves, and the background is the blue from the pool. And I felt like these leaves really meant something to me. Like, this is one of the reasons why I said this is all positive. I turned this into little praying pillows for Danny's praying pillows. So I, had been working on doing these pillows, and they're beautiful. They're beautiful. In fact, Fawn, I'll have to bring one with me when I see you next in Florida. So I just have them and give them away to people. But I felt like that's Danny. It's not going to be a legal suit. It's going to be these leaves that bring happiness and joy and rebirth is really who he is. And I didn't want them to, be able to talk about him in a legal case. I did write the hospital a letter, but I'm glad now that I didn't. There were times when I used to think, why didn't I? But I have no regrets.
Well, I don't think you should. The other thing I was curious about was, how did this impact a new marriage? Now, you had been with Jim a long time, and he's special. And also the listeners need to know he's a doctor. He's a pulmonologist, right? So, yeah, so he had, he was able to help you in so many ways, but that's a hard place to start a marriage. So
unbelievable support. I could not have done it without him. I think it just got us closer. I think for the first 2 months, I would wake up in the middle of the night and start crying and shaking. And, all he did was, he just held me and let me do that. And, he loves to listen to stories. There were times when, for the first 3 months, we would go out to dinner and I would start crying. And he's also very funny. So he's always trying to crack a joke. And he goes, you got to stop this because people are going to think I'm hitting you. Stop. And then he would try to make me laugh during dinner. So he really tries to bring humor into it. But he's so understanding. And he knows that I can go right back into it and then come right back out. And he's good with that. And it's amazing. He's like been an angel. And you're right, a pulmonologist, he understood what happened to Danny and everything. And he's been so supportive about that. But yeah, that's another grace, right? God's grace.
Married the right guy, that's for sure.
Yeah. And humor is really important, by the way. Laughter. We use it a lot.
Well, I'm blown away, Michelle.
it touched my heart. Thank you for sharing your story. I know it's going to resonate with a lot of people. And like I said, I think it's going to send a very powerful message of hope.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all so much. As hard as it is, I feel like it honors Danny. I really do, because he was such an amazing, amazing young man that, when I get an opportunity to lift him up, it's really beautiful. So thank you.
Well, we say thank you to Danny right now.
Thank you.
I just feel so lucky that I did get to meet him, because he's the sweetest thing. So anyhow, thank you for this.
Thank you.
Go have some more life experiences so you can come back and tell us what they mean. Okay.
Okay.
And much love to you, and much gratitude.
Thank you both. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you. Okay, Fawn. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining the Hard-Won Wisdom Podcast with best-selling author Fawn Germer and corporate innovator Michelle Brigman. Join us weekly for career and life-changing conversations with some of today's most influential thought leaders, senior executives, and trailblazers who will share their mentoring wisdom. This podcast is brought to you by the Women's Leadership Network. Visit hardwonwisdom.com for more on this podcast and for links to Fawn and Michelle's web pages and social media. Also, be sure to rate, subscribe, and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. We really appreciate that effort, and we'll see you next week.